In my classroom, I often do something that I call anonymous play. So I believe the power of anonymity is so huge because I think when we get surrounded by people, we have a tendency to move in the direction of the most powerful voice. And I think there's some research that the spoken word among friends or in a committee tends to polarize the position. It makes it even more extreme. So I just want to share this. I'm a huge college football fan. I know most of my stuff is baseball, but I'm also, I did a Heisman Trophy presentation today, and I want to just share this. So there's something called the end of history illusion, which we think that we've learned from all our past mistakes, and that at where we're at currently, we are the most enlightened we've ever been, and we are not prone to the mistakes of our ancestors. And as I was digging into the Heisman Trophy, I realized that was a committee tasked with picking the best college football player. Very similar to a committee tasked with picking the best representative. Because I was originally pro-Alabama, and then the more I thought about it, I was like, I think I'm pro-Florida State. And I just want to explain why. I got no dog in the fight. I'm a big Penn State fan. But the first Heisman Trophy was issued in 1935. And as was the case in yesteryear, a bunch of old men sitting around geographically biased toward the Midwest and the East. Jay Berwanger from Chicago. 10 years later, they finally decided that someone other than a college senior could be worthy. They gave it to Doc Blanchard, who was a junior. And again, geographically biased, Notre Dame was getting a ton of representation. In 1956, probably the most egregious awarding of the Heisman Trophy went to Paul Hornung. Notre Dame was 2-8, and they overlooked Jim Brown of Syracuse. Obviously, if you follow football, you know the name Jim Brown, and by all accounts, this was the biggest controversy among Heisman voters. 5 years later, they tried to rectify this wrong, and they gave it to the first black athlete, Ernie Davis from Syracuse. 1962, they gave it to the first West Coast athlete, Terry Baker from Oregon State. So as we move in our timeline, the first of something continues to happen. 1971, they reduced the scholarship limit from unlimited to 95. 1972, freshmen were allowed to play. In 1975, Archie Griffin was the first repeat winner. They finally decided that, or maybe not decided, but at least recognized someone that was worthy of winning it for a second time. In 1980, 8 years after college freshmen were allowed, they still weren't willing to give Herschel Walker the Heisman Trophy, despite the fact that he probably deserved it. They gave it to George Rogers of South Carolina, despite Herschel outperforming George. 1991, they reduced the scholarships again. In 1997, they gave it to the only defensive back, Charles Woodson. 2007, your first sophomore, Tim Tebow. 2012, your first freshman, Johnny Manziel. I presented this to my class because I think what happens is committees tasked with picking the best are often biased against the first. And the more I thought about this, the Heisman is an anonymous vote, but that committee was not anonymous. And I find it really hard to believe that they were not influenced in creating a playoff that didn't have the first SEC contender. So I don't know if you appreciate this. I certainly did, and I presented it to my class. It's the end of history illusion is what it's called. We continue to make mistakes. We continue to be hesitant to recognize the first of anything. And I actually changed my position once I thought of it like this, where that committee was not anonymous. And I think that committee didn't want to be to have a first playoff without the SEC.